Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman. I will be eventually joined by Chris Clow. He's doing fatherly duties right now, and in the meantime, I've got two awesome guests that I cannot wait to just talk about here and talk about an amazing story that I think is definitely worth it. So, without further ado, I will get into it with my few other hosts here, or guests, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what to call them. But I am joined by Mr. Dell. Dell, sir, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Adam Nye, how are we doing?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for coming. Both of you guys for coming on. You guys are both fans of the other show we do called the I do with Sean Gerber on the MCU fan show. You guys are super supportive and awesome people. And I was telling you guys earlier, you both represent aspects of my life. You have Dell, the hardcore football person over here, and you have Adam down there representing the musician punk rock side of me, which is really rad. So thank you so much. You guys are both inspired me in ways for football, music. It's all great. Love it all. I have a lot of interests, as my friend Justin Bolger once told me. And I have too many, maybe, as my wife might say. So anyway, Chris will be eventually joining us. His daughter, I think, is just kind of been a little bit of a stinker tonight, but either way, he'll be joining us. Today, I'm really excited because we're going to talk about a comic series that I discovered kind of at last minute. And it's one of those things where the beauty of comic books is you can discover something and just kind of don't realize that it's there until like last minute. You're like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And so I'll always like the character Kang, right? Kang has just always been a really unique character in Marvel comic book, continuity that I've always liked. I've always liked the character. And I think it looks amazing. Obviously created by Jack Kirby. He's coming into Phase 5 here with Quantumania. And I discovered this great comic series called Kang, Only Myself Left to Conquer. And it's such a great fitting title for me, for the series. And I love it. I think it's great. And we're going to break it down here in a second, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on the MCU kind of going forward, because this is MCU required reading, and we obviously got to talk about it a little bit. So my question is, what's your guys' take on the MCU going forward? Adele, I'll go with you first. After Phase 4 going into Phase 5 Quantumania, what's your take on everything so far?
I'm really excited about it. I really have enjoyed Phase 4. I know it gets some flack from a lot of different people on social media and everything. I've really enjoyed how they're kind of setting the table, and we don't see exactly all that they have planned. We're so used to like the past few years of Marvel where everything is, well, how does this connect? How does this connect? How does this connect? And I have no idea how Moon Knight connects. For example, right now it's like its own freestanding show. But I really love how they're like introducing all of these new characters, while at the same time they're bringing in this whole concept of the multiverse and variants, and which I think is an amazing, for lack of a better term, MacGuffin, just for them to bring in all the Fox properties. And it's such a great, storytelling device they have now to bring in all the Marvel content that's been created for the past 20, 30 years, really.
Right.
So I've really enjoyed, I think that Kang is the absolute perfect bad guy, big bad for this new era of Marvel content. So I don't know. I'm excited to see. And I was wondering today, actually, like, I wonder if Kang was always the plan for coming up after the Infinity Saga, or if after the Fox properties were acquired, like, okay, let's bring in Kang. Maybe who knows what they even had going on there.
That's a good point.
The perfect device,
Yeah, that's a good point. Adam, I'm gonna let you go first, and then I'm gonna answer that question because I think it's a really good question. And I talked about it, I think, on the last MCU fan show actually, but I'll let Adam go in. What's your going in from Phase 4, overall Phase 4 thoughts? I know you ranked it. I saw you rank it. You ranked, by the way, Werewolf by Night's way too low, sir. I was personally upset by that. I saw it was like towards the bottom. I was like, what the hell, dude? Like Werewolf by Night's incredible. Anyway, I digress.
Toward the bottom? I might have to revisit that.
Maybe I was wrong. I could be wrong.
The reality is I really enjoyed Phase 4. I was listening to today a podcast dumping on it, and really, I hope Phase 5 is better than Phase 4. I'm like, well, yeah, me too, but that's I really enjoyed Phase 4. I think I enjoyed overall the movies more than the shows and special presentations.
Yeah.
but that's not surprising. I love that we got shows. We never had those before, so that was a cool addition.
Daredevil. I mean, come on. I mean,
no, within the MCU continuity. And if I did rank Werewolf by Night a little bit lower, it's because at this point it hasn't sort of made its inroads into the rest of MCU continuity. But yeah, I mean, I did love a lot of those shows. Well, I loved some of those shows. What?
Okay, which ones didn't you not like? Tell me.
There was nothing I didn't like other than maybe the finale of She-Hulk. I felt like the finale of She-Hulk was like, hey, have you liked the show so far? You're an idiot. Because it's been really badly written. Like the show's telling you. It's like mocking you for enjoying it.
I liked it. But I see your point. I liked, to be honest, I thought She-Hulk was one of the better ones, to be honest.
Really?
I mean, if you would have told me, before, I would have liked She-Hulk more than Moon Knight, I would have been like, you're effing nuts. Because Moon Knight's one of my favorite characters.
And you are. I liked Moon Knight a lot more than I liked She-Hulk.
Well, listen, I don't know if you guys listened to the episode where the episode before 4 or 5, the really deep emotional one where it goes back into the past. That episode may be one of my favorite episodes ever of Marvel TV, because it really brought a lot of emotions, personal emotions in me. And it was very emotional for me to talk about in the show. First time probably ever in any podcast I've ever had like such a deep emotional like response to something.
The second to last episode of Moon Knight or She-Hulk?
Moon Knight. Yeah. And so
it was gnarly. Yeah,
it was gnarly. And so it was hard for me to like watch the show because I love Moon Knight so much as a character from the comic books, but seeing like it wasn't terrible. It wasn't quite what I thought it could have been. It just was, I don't know. I digress. It's going to be too long. I brought
no expectations from comics. I just enjoyed it.
I know.
And thought it was incredible.
And Adam, and that's why I'm trying to change this. I'm trying to change both of y'all. But Dell already knows the awesome world of comics, which I'm going to bring you into this world, Adam. I'm going to bring you into this world. So one of the things you brought up, Dell, was the fact that was King always the villain? And that's a good question. Here's my take on this. And I said it on last week, I think on the last episode, which honestly, the last episode of MCU Fan Show, I thought was really pretty good. And again, if you haven't done it so, people, please hit the like button, subscribe. That's how I get out there and feed all that stuff. It's crazy. It sucks. I had to beg for it, but I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers. I'm so damn close. Just help me, please. Anyway, the last episode of MCU Fan Show, we talked about just how, like, Kang, and I said, here's why I think, Dell, that Kang maybe always was the reason, or always the villain after Thanos, because how they defeated him. Because the problem is they went back in time in multiverse, got all different things. They had to do all this, reworking all these things together. And I feel that when you do that, it was cool and amazing, but you kind of do open yourself up for always having to fix your problems. Right? Like, well, let's go back to the multiverse and just do that. There's only so many times you can go to the well, and it feels like this is them closing that gap right away. So instead of like, let's just kind of let's not visit the multiverse for like a long time and just let it linger there. Let's just address it right away, and let's close it with Kang. And I feel like that seems like the best way to address it. And honestly, I think Kang's a really interesting character. And there's lots of really cool things you can do with it. I mean, they've got No Way Home. You got Multiverse of Madness, which is one of my personal favorites of maybe the MCU. I love that movie to death, it baffles me if people don't like that movie. I honestly does. I don't get it. Like, I think it's incredible. Dell, are you a fan of Multiverse?
I liked it. It was a true Sam Raimi movie. I loved that. For me, and I'm actually in the process of watching through WandaVision again and coming up on the final episode, and just the jump that the character of Wanda takes from the episode 9 of WandaVision to Multiverse of Madness is just a little bit. It's a jump, and it's a little bit of it's definitely two different directors, and it just makes you wonder how much information Sam Raimi and the writers had going into filming based on how WandaVision was going to end. But that said, I love the movie. It was a great movie. For me, that's just a little bit, turns a little too hard. And I think like a 3-minute exposition in Multiverse of Madness, if they had just explained the Darkhold just a little bit more, Just
Yeah.
just not 3 minutes, just something that would have helped explain it. I think that might have solved some of that problem. But that said,
What?
it's
Yeah.
uh
But,
it's no Dark World Thor, so I'll give it
oh,
that.
not
You
even
even could have just
close.
tacked on like an extra minute or so to that tag at the end of WandaVision. You know what
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
could have
and
put
Yeah,
it there.
yeah.
And I agree.
see-
That's my
let's see.
same. I love
I
Multiverse of
Okay, go ahead.
Madness, but that is my only criticism of it.
Yeah,
All
me
right,
too.
good. Yeah,
Same.
all right. We're all Multiverse Madness fans. Great, because I
Yes.
know when me and Sean talk about it, I feel like he's like he gets so worked up about it, he gets so upset about Wanda, and I'm like, I tell him, I'm like, dude, I get it. Like, I get Wanda, like 1,000%. I'm like, if I was a dad, I'd be like, I'd sacrifice the entire multiverse for my kid too. Sorry, everybody, I love you, but
Hmm.
I love the kid more than everybody else. No offense. So I get Wanda, and like that feeling of like losing it, like that I can identify with that, at least for me, and so I thought the end of WandaVision set it up fine. I was surprised, but at the same time, I'm a little biased because I love the comics, and the comics that's kind of where she's going, right? This is and if you read Young Avengers, which we'll talk a little bit about in a little bit, you'll get it's help lead into it a little bit. It'll lead into a little bit. So anyway, so I do think the multiverse aspect was meant to close the gap permanently. Because again, really quick side tangent, I do think that the more political, more modern, I don't want to say modern politics, but the more political, like Game of Thrones ish, if you will, mentality will be what happens after the multiverse saga. I think that's why they're setting that up with Black Panther. They're setting that up with I think other like, with the Thunderbolts maybe and things like that. There's definitely things that they're setting up, and when Doom shows up, I'm telling y'all, that's when the whole Game of Thrones mentality is going to go, because you're going to have Latveria, you're going to have Taco Khan or Atlantis, aka Atlantis. You're going to get Wakanda, Latveria, United States, United Kingdom. You're going to get all those people all fighting for like this kind of like arms race, if you will. I think that's what's going to end up happening. It's going to be when Doom enters the picture, it's going to add a whole different element to everything. And there's going to be a lot more drama, I think, from that aspect of like espionage and that kind of tension thriller aspect. So at least that's my prediction. So,
And
anyway,
real quick, if I can speak to that real quick. If they pull that off, good for them, because after Endgame, I remember saying to whoever would hear me, like, after all this cosmic huge things, like, I don't give a rip about Earth. I don't care about in their storytelling. Who cares? That's one planet out of how many?
Right.
But if they're able to do that and successfully bring all the attention back to Earth and what's going on Earth, I think that's awesome, and that's a really cool rubber band how they're able to fling that back.
Adam, any thoughts on last minute thoughts before we move on to the comics, the good stuff?
Sure. Well, the only two thoughts I had while you were talking were, number one, what's that place they go in Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Oh, Madripoor.
So you think that'll be part of the?
Maybe.
I don't really know the history of that place.
To be honest, Madripoor is kind of a blind spot for me. It's kind of an X-Men thing, to be honest, a little bit from what I understand. Because again, I don't know. But at first I thought, I'm like, did they talk about Genosha? I know they talked about Genosha playing somewhere, playing to something like that. But anyway, but yeah.
Well,
what else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my only other thought was just, did they know it was going to be Kang? I don't know what they were thinking, but I just remember that year period between Infinity War and Endgame. That was such a topic of discussion. It's like, what's going to come after Endgame? Who's going to be the next Thanos? And I felt like what I was hearing in all the podcasts and YouTube stuff I was watching was Kang and Galactus. Like those were the two names that just kept coming up.
Galactus.
I felt like that was coming into the conversation quite a bit in terms of
you're not wrong. I mean, people definitely people definitely talked about Galactus and who was the other person they said? You said it was Galactus and Kang. Okay, Kang. Well, Kang, I would never have predicted Kang, to be honest. I never would have thought that. I would have thought probably to be honest, Masters of Evil, Baron Zemo, getting his team of Masters of Evil people, all that stuff. But I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. Well, I don't know. It's interesting how everyone perceives those things, but Galactus is a Fantastic Four thing. I don't think you could do it without them, to be honest. It'd be sacrilegious in my opinion, especially with Silver Surfer. So, whatever.
Well, I mean, it was because it was around that time, right, that the Fox deal was closing. And so maybe that's what's coming next.
True. That's true. That's true. So, yeah. So speaking of Kang and all that stuff, we're going to talk about Kang, Only Myself to Conquer, a great, at least in my opinion anyway, great comic books series to go read for if you're, for those who are out there that don't know about Kang or at least again, to me, if you don't know the character or anything, I think this is the comic to go get. And Adam, forgive me for covering you up, sir. Usually it's me who covered up, but Chris isn't here, so I have to run the show here. Yeah. So I love the story. And without giving too many spoilers, and we'll try to keep it spoiler free as possible. We try. We're not always perfect, but we try. What I thought about the series was the one problem with Kang, in my opinion, is that he's a very confusing character. Okay. He's not the most, simplistic person to be like, oh, this is how you explain Kang. Well, let me tell you how much time you got, buddy. Like that's pretty much what I tell people is like how much time you got to talk about Kang. Cause it's going to be a while. I thought this series did a beautiful job of giving us the best insight into the character of Kang. And without going too crazy, I mean, granted, like it's comic books, it's going to get nuts here or there, but it never felt like it was too much, in my opinion. It never felt, it broke it down in a very simplistic form. And I thought incorporated all the different characters that represents this character together. So I went with Del first, but I'll go with Adam next for the kind of, because you surprised me, sir. You surprised me. So I'm hoping you read it before again. What's your take on Kang, Only Myself to Conquer? Kind of first impression.
I mean, so, I feel like people watching this should know I don't have really a history of reading comics. Like even as a kid, it's not really a medium I have a lot of familiarity with. And you reached out and you were like, hey, do you want to read comics? I'm like, sure. And you're like, what, what would you want to read? And when I said, I'm like, hey, with this Kang stuff coming, I'd love to know more about him. So you recommended it. So my reactions to the comic are both to this comic itself and to just my experience dipping my toes into the medium, which I'm totally a beginner at. So there were some aspects of just comic book reading I'm unfamiliar with that were getting in my way a little bit. And so I'll say this, I'm like an unsure enough person that I was almost never criticizing the comic itself. I was just
good.
I don't know if I'm doing this right.
That's fair. That's fair.
So like I was interested in what was going on. I definitely, to me, the themes that I was detecting, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I did feel some like overlap with where the MCU has been recently thematically. The character, like, I don't know. I still don't know how well I understand him. Because, he's a character, especially with given in the title, he's kind of at war with himself.
Right.
But he's like monologuing that whole inner war at you. Like the so much of this comic is these like purple boxes you see on the screen.
Yeah.
Which are like,
it's his narration, right?
Narrating at the reader rather than the white bubbles where they talk to each other. And I found that jarring. And I'm like, I don't feel like I know a character because they're talking to me. I get to know the character when I see them interacting with others, and that's there. But yeah, I just struggled with some of the aspects of the. I couldn't tell whether my struggles were always with the medium or with the character or with the book or what. And I still don't know. I did start rereading, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm understanding the medium a little bit better.
And I think you bring up a great point, because I think that's one of the biggest problems with people reading comic books is that, and another point I think you brought up to me, which is a great point too. We'll bring up in a second later on, but it is intimidating because if you're not familiar, when you get like, I'll throw this page up here. This is all, narration, right? And he's just kind of, and this is a little bit different than most comics, I would say. Usually the most common thing for at least mainstream comic books, I would say, is for Marvel or DC or whatever, what have you. They definitely go heavy on the monologues and the narrations in their head, but usually there's enough characters in the comic book itself, Adam and Del, like that usually that you can get a little more characterization through interaction. This isn't that comic book. This is more of a guy. Well, let me show you. There's a great page I want to try to bring up, but it's almost like it brings you on a journey with the character, throughout his story about what he's gone through. And like, it's him telling you how he becomes Kang essentially through not just the story, but through his self narration and monologues. So, and that is not necessarily a common aspect of mainstream comic books, or as far as how it's narration and narrative and all that stuff. So that to me is I could see that be a little jarring at first for you. Is that ringing a bell a little bit? Or
yeah, I mean, but that page was jarring for a few reasons. Okay, it also covers thousands of years in a single page. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, welcome to comics, man. Welcome to comics. That's all I gotta say. Well, because the one thing, and this is the one thing we'll bring up here, because Kang is established that he's older by the time he fights the Avengers, and he's a kid here. They had to kind of like get it up to speed, essentially. So they brought in but see, this is where I think the hardcore fan, because I don't want to reveal who does it, because there's someone that helps them get to this point. And if you're a hardcore 616 nut like I am, Marvel Zombie, when you read that comic, you're like, oh, man, this is awesome. Like it's like I was like, dang, dude, like these. So it's a group. So this is our group of writers. A group. I say group. It's two people. A group of two people. I guess I don't know if that makes sense. But it's I'm terrible with names. If you guys
works for Black Keys.
Remember. Yeah. Black Keys. Death from Above. 1979. It list goes on and on. Lanzig and Kelly, and I don't know their first names. I'm terrible with names. They are a writing duo who are also writing Captain America right now. And goddamn, Captain America is so goddamn good. Like it's phenomenally good. Like I can't. If you guys are both Captain America fans, go read Captain America. Go on Marvel Unlimited. Go on Comixology. Go to a comic store. Go buy the goddamn comic book because it's so good. Like I don't even want to tell you what it's about. I've raved about it enough. It's the best Captain America written since Brubaker, in my opinion. Like it's that good. And if you know Brubaker, you know what the hell I'm talking about. Like it's that good. And it's through this comic that I realized, oh, these guys are writing Captain America, sold. And I went to it and they did not disappoint. They do a phenomenal job, I think, of interweaving so much continuity of over the years to also incorporating the heavy Easter eggs and really deep stuff of Kang, which we'll get to a little bit more. But I'm going to save some of the surprises for you all. So how he gets to this point of basically turning from a kid to like basically a young adult, or young adult to like a man, is it's pretty cool. But yeah, you're right. Like this is the one thing about the comic medium. And see, Adam, this is why I love having beginners on here, is because it helps me explain this stuff to people who are watching. It's a condensed medium. It's all about condensing that stuff. So I do think that if you like long form, like TV shows, comics are a little different animal. They're like a movie, but it's even more condensed than a movie, right? Mm-hmm. So it really is about condensing as much as it can through the visual storytelling of the layouts, of page layouts. So, Delman, what's your familiarity with Kang going into Only Myself to Conquer? What was it like leaving Only Myself to Conquer?
So back in 2020 is when I really downloaded the Marvel Unlimited app, and I said, okay, I don't know where to start. And, so I was having, read comics like for many years growing up and everything, and then discovered girls and kind of,
another cool things a little bit that aren't comics.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I get you.
But so I didn't know where to start. And, obviously I'm a big MCU fan. And so I just started reading through, I said, all right, I'll read the Avengers. And I started with like the 1963 or whatever year it was Avengers comic, and started working my way through there. And then Kang came. So much exposition, so much like, now I will do this.
Unnecessary exposition, right? Like I'm going to take this hammer and hit you. It's like, you don't need to say it, Stan. Just do it.
Just hit him, dude. Just hit him.
Just hit him. Just hit him. Exactly.
He might duck if you tell him what you're going to do.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, yeah.
when the Kang character, because I think the first enemy they fought was Loki, and then Namor, and then I think it was Kang, and I was just
Kang
right
was
away.
real
I was like
quick.
super interested in the guy, and I didn't really track down any other comics that he was in, but I started reading a lot about him. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and like explanations and stuff like that about the character and everything. And when I found out that I just thought he was really cool. He had a cool outfit and
His
everything.
costume's
and stuff like that.
incredible. His costume's
Oh my
incredible.
gosh! And the
So
fact that
good.
he came from the year 3000 or 4000, depending on when you were talking to him and what he was doing,
Yeah. And the
I
year
just thought that was really
3000.
cool.
Yeah.
And the
Little
fact that he was a
Conan.
descendant of Reed Richards and everything, I don't know. He was super interesting to me. Just
We'll get into that. We'll
and
get into that soon too.
yeah, sure. But yeah, so that was kind of my familiarity. Really, just his origin, or his first appearance, I should say, and then just reading about the character more and more. But then when you introduced, the comic, I think you introduced, was it Timeless on the MCU? I forget which one it was.
I think you had read Timeless after this, maybe, or vice, something like that. I think
I forget.
because I remember. Yeah, well, because on the MCU fan show, I was like, I think I told Sean for the first time on the air, I was like, dude, go read this comic. It's so good. Like, out there, people want to know about Kang, go read this comic series. It's so good. And I think you said, you mentioned how you got on the show. We were talking. You said, hey man, I read Kang. I just finished up Timeless, and which by the way, Timeless was a lot of fun too. But you told me I think you read this and then I believe, I could be wrong. I think you read this and then Timeless.
It's ironic that we're sitting here talking about King the Conqueror, and I don't remember which one I read first. Everything.
Well, yeah.
Maybe
we need time machines,
but
right? Yeah, version,
but
variants.
But after exiting, the past few weeks of reading up on a bunch of different Kang material, oh my gosh, what a really cool character! And one of the things that I think that I'm looking forward to his introduction in the MCU is how are they going to explain? I mean, they did a really good job at the end of Loki, but for Joe moviegoer, how are they going to make sure the audience doesn't get confused in terms of like, well, I thought that guy died 3 seasons ago, or I thought that guy died in the last movie, or I thought. So I'm really interested. I trust that they're going to do a phenomenal job of it. They have nothing but a perfect track record when it comes to explaining their stories, in my opinion. But I'm really interested to see how they're going to do it. But just this character, after reading through, this Kang the Conqueror series, so complex. He's like Shrek, man. He's got layers, and he
does.
There's so many different things going on with this guy, and just all his iterations. With in Egypt, and I don't want to get into all that stuff. We're talking about spoilers, so I don't know where the lines are, but all the different iterations. Yeah, all the different iterations of this character, how they've inserted him into Earth's timeline. Just the fact that that Sphinx, that was him. Stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
He's such an interesting character, and I'm really excited to see to read more about him. To be honest with you, I think you suggested me the New Avengers, and I've really enjoyed that little diversion with this character, and then
Young Avengers.
I'm sorry, Young Avengers.
No,
and,
easy to slip. Trust me. It's easy to slip on that one.
And it's been really great. There's so many directions that they can take this character or they have taken. I'm sure I'm really interested just to learn more about him.
Yeah, I think that one of the things about this series, again, when you talk about all the different stories over like 60 years or however long he's been around, right? And our friend Chris Cloud just showed up. Chris, let me finish my thought and I'll bring you on here, my friend. One of the things I thought this series did a phenomenal job was incorporating so many different aspects of his history and having it all kind of tie together. Because and Adam, like and Del, you guys may not know all this, but it's like when you go from the Iron Man looking character, which if you guys don't know what that is, we'll dive a little bit into that, and then you go to the Red Centurion. You're like, what is that? Like, it's more of a nod to what is represented already in the comic books that's happened before, and it's just kind of making sense of why those different versions may exist in those realities, if that makes any sense. And that's what's really cool about it. And and really quick, Chris, before I let you on here, one of the cool things about, I think, that what you said, Del, you're kind of worried about, like, how is Joe, average Joe person going to say, how do we keep these different kings apart by having them look completely different visually? Because the one thing about the kings is that they all look very different. Like the He Who Remains, he's not. He was never in the comics. Obviously, it was, if you guys know, he's not a character that's an established variant of Kang or whatever, right? But the character Immortus is, the Red Centurion is, and King obviously, and King Tut. Like they're all massively they look massively different than every one of the others, right? So I think that's how you do it. They have to visually look strikingly different for them, the audience to totally capture. And let's be real, Jonathan Majors is a phenomenal actor. That dude's He Who Remains is so bonkers. And then seeing the little bit we've seen of Kang in the trailers, I'm like, I don't think the audience with visual cues and then his acting, I don't think they're gonna have too much of a problem. And maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. Bringing on my co-host, one of my best buddies in the world, Chris Cloud. Mr. Chris Cloud, how are we doing, sir? You're muted. We can't hear you. And now he's frozen. All right. So anyway, I'll let Chris. Wait. Let's see here. Chris, can you hear us now? Nope. Still can't hear you. It's okay. Anyway, as I was saying, but one of the things about, I think, Kang is so interesting is that because there's different versions, he's at war with himself, right? And so that's what I think is this. I think what this comic series did a great job of was the fact that he was at war with himself. And Chris, if you're ready, maybe we can talk about it. Are you sure? Nope, still can't. Here. Let's we'll come back to Chris. He's gonna come back in a second. So did the different variants of Kang confuse you guys reading the comic series at all? Adam, I know you're kind of getting used to the comic medium. Did that really confuse you, throw you for a loop?
I mean, it seemed like it centered on two. It didn't seem like there was like a crazy amount of Kangs. It was
I mean, there are two that are. It's really one, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's the way I wait. Well, now let's just be real. Like, tell me, like, Del, am I crazy on this? Is that my interpretation of everything? Tell me.
Well, he's definitely in a loop, at least. And so, in terms of how the multiverse works, multiverse and time travel. I'm trying to figure out how those kind of like intersect with each other, because
it's weird.
So maybe it's a different, same multiverse, same universe, but same. It's kind of like the Terminator. Like, how is that John Connor's dad? It's almost the same kind of thing. Like this.
Oh God, yeah. No, that's a great point. I didn't think of it like that. That's a really good point. It is like John Connor's dad. The whole thing. That is weird. No, but that is kind of what this Kang version is. But see, I took it as it's his destiny, and that's the one thing about I would say this comic book series. And I'm curious what you guys' thoughts on is that it plays on the ideas of destiny and God, Adam, I know we both have religious background. Well, yeah, obviously you have a better, way deeper religious background than I do. You're a freaking, you teach it. I went to Bible school and whatnot, so I have a little bit of that in me as well. But that whole predestination, what is free will, not free will, but help me out here. You're the smart guy here. Yeah, free will, but it's more than free will, like destiny, like that whole concept, fate. Right? Like fate. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word fate. Fate is it feels like the big theme of this comic book series. And I'm curious if you guys would agree to that.
Yes. And that's what I was talking about before with the tie into like, I saw free will and fate as a massive theme in Phase 4.
Yes.
Obviously that's like central to WandaVision as she's overriding these people's free will. Black Widow, people's free will is being stripped from them.
Okay.
What I saw central in this one too was this comic echoed to me that Doctor Strange episode of What If, where there's that kind of like did I freeze?
Yeah, it's okay. Just keep going. Just go. We can hear you. If you can hear us, we can hear you, sir. We got you.
Hear me?
We can. We got you. We hear you.
I can't tell if I'm glitching or not.
You're good. You're good. Just go. Just go, sir. Just go. Here, I'll let Chris. I'll let Adam.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. The in that Doctor Strange episode of What If, where he's sort of like fighting against that. I forget what they called it. That like inescapable moment. That all the different realities shared. That's like in this comic. There's this. He's struggling against this he's enslaved by his own fate, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, I see that as a very central to this comic, and a theme I see running in a lot of Phase 4.
That's a good point. Chris, can we hear you? No, this is so weird. Why can't we hear Chris? Hold on a second. Let me see if this is so crazy. I don't know what's going on here. Huh. Yeah, man. I don't know what's going on. This just sucks. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. This is crazy. Put that back on the mic here. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, sorry, man. So I'm not sure what's going on. This stinks. Usually it's a little. Chris is usually a lot smoother with this. Yeah, phase. The whole fate aspect of this series was, to me, in my opinion, and I'm curious what you guys would think with this. I think this, to me, is what the themes of Phase 5 are going to be, because I've talked a lot about it on the MCU fan show, that I think that King represents the whole idea of you can't go back in time and fix everything. And that's what he's trying to do. Like the variants, and he's trying to control the whole idea of conquering. That's his name, Kang the Conqueror. He's trying to conquer realities, but he's also trying to conquer time. Like, he's trying to conquer everything because obviously he's failed somewhere. Where has he failed? And that the character from Loki, Ravonna, which plays prominently heavily into the comic book here, is very interesting. So yeah, like I'm curious if you guys, do you guys think? I'll ask you this first. Do you guys think Ravonna, is that her name? Ravonna? Is that, I would, me, terrible with names. Do you guys?
I think it's Ravonna.
Ravonna? Okay, I'll go with Ravonna. Ravonna. Sorry.
My Ravonna.
Yeah, oh god. We're gonna go get Power Pop up in here, which is maybe the dirtiest, sickest song of all time. If you listen to it.
It's disgusting.
It is gross. It sucks. It's like, god damn it. Oh, stop. This song is so good, but no, this is bad. Do you guys think that she'll play a pivotal role in Phase 5? In this, after reading this comic book specifically?
I mean, she's in the comic book, not all that much. I mean, she drives him.
On. She's in it a lot, homie. Come on.
Is she? Well, not in the first 2.5 issues, or at least.
She's in the second one. She's second through 5, or 2 through 5. She is.
That last one, she's in it a lot for sure.
Okay.
But in terms of how she plays into Phase 5, I don't know if she's going to be a big component of Phase 5. I think she's going to be a big component of Loki season 2. So that'll be interesting to see if they take her from the show and put her into the movies. But they didn't really seem to do a good job of setting that up in the first season of Loki. They had the character, and towards the end they kind of teased that she was a teacher on Earth, and so it's gonna be there's more there they want to, I think, reveal. But
right.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that she's going. I mean, because especially the fact that she plays like a variant within that thing. When you read the comic, you understand the motivation of what is driving that character, and I think she is, she's in the first comic book, Adam, because he has to this whole first is in the first comic book.
Is she Addie?
Wait, is that her? Wait, did they ever say
there's this girl Addie in the first one?
Well, that's what.
In that small tribe.
So I consider that the same person.
Okay, maybe it is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the way I looked at it anyway. Chris, is your mic working yet? Anything? Oh man. All right, I think Chris might be. Chris, I'm not sure what to do, man. All right, I love you, Chris. Love you. That stinks. Oh,
nice to almost lose you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Chris, I'm not sure what's going on there. That's super weird. No, I think that to me was let's see here. Chris, a little something here. Oh. All right. So Chris, are you all right? Chris, stay in the chat for me, Chris. I like this. By the way, this is my older brother, Derek. I love you, Derek. Thank you for always supporting me. Chris, tell me, since you can't speak verbally on the mic, can you tell us what are you more excited to read Captain America now after reading this? Because the same writers. yeah, I viewed those as that character as Eddie. I always thought her name was Ravonna because she's like basically the same person in Egypt he finds later on, right? It's like he says, her eyes are unmistakable, which by the way, another cool Easter egg in issue 2. I was like, okay, I'm into this. Like with the whole King Tut, and they bring in again, I don't want to reveal too much because it's a pretty cool Easter egg, but that whole aspect of who she is and who she plays, I thought was really cool.
But also the Egypt stuff, when Dell was asking, how's Moon Knight factoring into everything else? That was I was reading this. I'm like, ooh, maybe I do see how Moon Knight is going to intersect with some of what's going on in terms of the Egypt stuff and the Alexander stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm curious if they're going to go, is the MCU going to go that deep? As far as Egypt goes, I don't know. That's what's so weird about it. I don't know if that's going to happen on, in the MCU. I don't know if we need it. I think King Tut, I'll be honest, not my favorite of the variants. That's just my opinion. Just kind of whatever. But I love Immortus. To me, I think Immortus is probably that is the one thing. And Chris, I'm not sure if you are familiar with Immortus a bunch, but he was the one missing link, I thought, in this whole series. If you guys don't know who Immortus is, he's like the older, wiser sage of I guess we call him the sage of Kang. He's like this. Let me throw up the comic cover here. Kind of, you see a little picture of him. He's on this cover. He's obviously the middle one to the right. That's Immortus. And he's kind of like, he hates Kang and Kang hates him. They both represent like the opposite of each other. He's more of like, let's keep things intact with the way things are supposed to be. And how they're supposed to be is the way I want them to be. Whereas Kang wants to conquer and rule everything under an iron fist. He wants to rule from afar, if you will, like kind of, and he almost represents, I think, the He Remains character a little bit with less hysteria. Like Immortus is more calm. And there's a great comic series called Avengers Forever. And if you guys are looking to get even more crazy Kang, which I cover for after Loki, I said, if you guys are wanting more Kang, go read Avengers Forever, because it's all about time variants and different versions, and it's crazy. And it's amazing. If you guys are, I feel like Del, you are 1000% ready for Avengers Forever. So go write it down, go read it. Adam, you need to read. You need to go to go a little bit of training camp and go through. I mean, no disrespect. Go through Young Avengers. Go through that maybe a little bit, and then you might be ready to go. And maybe a little more Avengers comics. Get a little more, wet behind the ears, and then go Avengers Forever, because Avengers Forever is like a complete deep dive into the Avengers teams. Like they basically, again, I have a great video about it. I think it's a great video. Where we talk about it. Basically, this guy Immortus basically plucks an Avenger from every era, from different time frames, and puts them all together in one team. And then it's basically Kang versus Immortus. Like that's what it is. And it's awesome. And the one thing I love the 616. I've read a lot of comics in my day. I don't know everything. I just don't. Hard to believe I know. But the one thing I will say is I didn't realize how prominent Immortus plays into like Wanda and Vision, because they get married in the comics because of Immortus. Immortus basically pushes them together to basically create that entity that they talk about in WandaVision. That's Immortus, who kind of gets her into that whole role.
What entity they talk about it?
It's the Nexus, the Nexus being, whatever. Like he wants to create the Nexus being. So he puts Vision and her together to get them kind of going. And then he wants them to create the children. So then he can because they become like super powerful Nexus beings. It's crazy. Like it gets super nuts. And I'm reading this, I'm like, holy shit. Like the seeds are there, because WandaVision, you're like, why is Wanda? Because there's going to be a redemptive act, right? For Wanda, and she's obviously part of the multiverse. What role does she play with that? I mean, I don't know. And okay, here we go. Let's go. Please, God, for the love of God, please let Chris go on, because I want to hear what Chris says. Chris, can we hear you?
Hello.
There.
Yeah! Woo! Yay! What happened? What happened?
this day has been a nightmare. So it's
Aw.
fitting that I don't know. I
Well-
just restarted my computer. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
IT people would
Good
hate
Lord.
you. Well,
There's a lot
right,
of
well, so-
expletives in your texts right now, Paul.
hold on. I'm gonna look.
I enjoyed that Mighty Wind reference, though.
Thank you. See,
Hey,
Adam,
what happened?
Adam and I know we're both musicians. Well, he's more musician than I am now, but I know we the same circle, same movies. We be homies. We got this. Yeah, you're right. Woo. Chris, dive deeper into this. We've heard our guest talk. We'll give them the last floor here in a little bit, but give me your thoughts on this comic. I'm dying to know now.
Well, I mean, I thought that my interactions with Kang have been relatively minimal because he hasn't really been used all that much over the course of my time primarily diving into the Marvel universe. You know, when I started reading Avengers, it was I guess Jeff Johns, and I think Johns used Kang a little bit, but then from Johns you went to Chuck Austin, which went into Bendis,
God.
which lasted years and years, right? And
Right.
Bendis used him, I think, once in the Heroic Age, but it wasn't really a particularly memorable appearance.
He wasn't in, or he was in the first run of his, right? Where it's like JRJR that he draws.
Yeah. That was Heroic Age. So that was
Yeah, that
after
wasn't-
New Avengers
yeah, that wasn't
ended,
great.
and the main team came back. The Bucky
Not
was the
great,
cap
Bob.
on that team. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a fine series, but not a particularly memorable appearance of Kang. So, I mean, in the years preceding and following, I tried to familiarize myself with him, and I figured this is a cool villain, and it seems like there's just a very unique kind. Yeah, ain't that the damn truth?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for that wisdom.
Presented a unique kind of threat that you just can't get with anybody else. So
right.
Naturally, when it became clear that the movies were going to be using him, everybody's interest peaked, and including mine. But there wasn't really a very good in for me to see a modernized version of his history. But lo and behold, that's exactly what this is. Like, I wasn't exactly sure what this was going to be before I started reading it, but I honestly really like these modernized takes of Marvel's villain origin stories. I think the last one that really resonated with me was Greg
Skull?
Pak's book about the Red Skull. Yeah,
you rave about that book,
that's a great book.
And the books that do by Brubaker is great too.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, seeing this conception of Kang in this way, it gave me very much an in to appreciate the kind of threat that he represents, and it gives this grand operatic canvas to show he's always here and he'll always be here. And how are you supposed to fight a force that can effectively be unstuck from time? Maybe you can't, but what does that do to someone for the person who can actually ride those rails? What kind of stresses are his own mind under? And this was a really good look at that. So I'm not going to say that I empathize with Kang as much, at least at the end. Like at the beginning, maybe.
Yeah, word. At the beginning, dude, like word. Go ahead.
Like, and it's a good device to introduce you to someone from the follyful perspective of youth, right? I mean, he thinks what every kid thinks, that I'm going to do it better. I'm going to make sure that this goes a totally different way. I'm going to set the world on fire and everyone's going to love it. And, he's just as much of a product of destiny, maybe even more so than anyone else is.
So I don't know if you heard us, and Adam and I were talking about this, and Del, I want to get your take on this too, man. What's your take on the whole idea of fate, destiny in this book? Because I've said, before you answer, I'll let Del answer because I don't think he answered it when we were talking about it earlier. And then Chris, you go. Del, what did you feel like that fate and destiny was a play in this book as much as me and Adam did? Because I definitely feel it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. The absolute point that Adam was referencing from the Doctor Strange episode of What If, where no matter how many times he tries to save Christine, she dies a different way. No matter what version of Ravonna Kang tries to save and what, whatever universe that he finds her in the next one or the time period or whatever, she always, it never it never happens. So either she
Right.
dies, or I think she dies in every one. But
Pretty
am I
much.
spoiling it? I don't know.
No,
But,
you're fine. Yeah.
but he can't, he can't get around it. So no matter what happens, it always fails. And it talks about hundreds or thousands of different versions of her that he's injected into time, and
Yeah.
you can't ever get the girl. So I think that is a destiny you cannot get around.
Yeah.
What's meant to be.
There's really quick, Chris. There's a scene in this comic, and we'll get to specific scenes here, and we'll make it a little bit longer if that's cool with you guys. Again, if you have the jet, just let me know. But the one thing I would say at the end of this book, Del, you're kind of digging into it, the whole idea of like you can't save, Rabono so many times. You inject so many different versions of the characters that by the time Kang is a different person, but we see at the issue 1, you see this part, this like Chris talked about, right? This whole youthful abundance of like, I found this beautiful thing. He's like, oh my god, I found it, and then like by the end, with when he at issue 5, when he takes on that Ravonna character, what does he say to her? It's like, it's like he's numb to it, like to her. And I'm just like, this is brutal. Like I legitimately, the first time I read it, I didn't hit, but that second time I'm like, god damn. There's a lot of this book, and it maybe because I liked it, I'm like hyped it up myself, and there's that could be true. I definitely feel this hit me way more emotionally the second time, I felt, for me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Well, and the idea of doom as an ideal, from what I understand, like people in the original stories, didn't they try to telegraph that Kang might be Doom?
I have a theory about this. It's not even a theory, but I have a pitch and a theory. I have a pitch. I'm an aspiring comic writer, and AKA I'll never become a writer for Marvel. That's fine. But I have an idea that they could incorporate this. But right now, they've kind of teased it, but they've never gone out of their way to say it. But there is a connection, but they haven't really figured out over the years how they're going to do it yet. But I did. But we'll talk about it later.
All right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean I like the idea. I think it was in the middle of the series where Kang also talks about the Nathaniel, I should say. This is the part where it could get really confusing. Nathaniel
let's go into it. Yeah.
About Doom being his inspiration, like he spent a full year in a hospital bed, and it was Doom that gave him the idea of what greatness could be, and then he's disappointed because his destiny is confronted with Kang, and he finds that disappointing. Instead of reaching the legendary status of someone like Victor Von Doom, and he finds someone that he looks down on as something to grow beyond, as opposed to something to grow into. But by the end of the series too, it's like that's on both sides of the spectrum. Kang is something to grow beyond and to grow into, which is paradoxical, but also probably appropriate considering the kind of story that's being told here. So there's just, it's a creative way to weave the concept of the time travel, and
go ahead, Adam. Go ahead, Adam. Oh, did Adam freeze?
He's frozen.
Maybe
he's frozen. So Chris, continue until Adam unfreezes.
Yeah, no, it's cool. But I mean, like the concept of the different versions that he's trying to navigate.
I keep glitching.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
I keep getting frozen and stuff. At least in my ears.
It happens. It happens.
Like
I guess my frustration, and this might get to my frustration with the whole story, is that. Uh-oh.
No, you're good. You're coming through, I think.
We see you, man. We see you. Oh, he's circling. He's a circle. He's a dark
cliffhanger he left us on.
Yeah, I know. I'm Adam. Come on now, man. Mr. Nye, what are we doing here? Mr.
Say it.
He's a theologian. God dang it, we got to hear this, which he is. He'll be back. Yeah, I think we'll try it again. All right, Adam, Part 2. Let's try it again.
Sorry.
It's all good. Dude, it's all good, man. Who cares? It's all good. Go ahead.
I guess the way, Chris, you were talking about it, the idea that, he wants to grow, that, young Nathaniel wants to grow beyond Kang, but he's also someone to grow into. I guess from my perspective, I'm like, that young, Nathaniel, as I'm reading, I'm like, he's right. You're right to rebel against this old version of yourself that's totally what's the word, kind of sold out, not sold out, but you know what I mean, like he's folded in on himself, never loved. That is like, of course, an idea to reject. He's right to reject it, but then the fact that he doesn't, it leaves me in the end, I'm like, okay, so what kind of story am I reading? And as I'm listening to you guys talk tonight, I'm like, okay, maybe what this is supposed to be is just telling me who this villain is, so I understand who he is as I see him in other stories. But as a self-contained story, I'm like, this sucks. What a fatalistic, doom-filled message of you should totally give up on your youthful naivety and stuff. I'm like, no, hold on to it. Be that kid.
But see, this is why I love talking about stories and debating and getting different perspectives, because I think you're right, Adam. The problem is, or not problem, but the thing is with the story, I think it does a great job of, it shows you where he went wrong, right? Like that's the whole thing, is like we're seeing how like this guy, like he went against the grain, and that's the whole thing. Like the universe was telling him this isn't going to work. And he still rebelled against the universe. And I think there is something to say, like when do you give up? At one point, when do you say enough is enough? I have to move on. And I talked about that being a prevalent theme, I think, into Kang's life, because what does he always want to do? He's trying to fix things. Like we talked about, he has different Ravana's, whatever her name is, his girlfriend, whatever. He's trying to constantly conjure up, and instead of moving on to somebody else, he's obsessed with the past. And as we all know, when you're obsessed with the past, you're obsessed with an ideal or legalism or the old ways, right, Adam? Huh? Am I getting through it? I'm sorry.
But it's also struggling against a torrent. It's struggling against a river of time, because he's got his eyes like if he's in front of a dam that's got a bunch of holes being poked in it, he's focused on one side of it and he's trying to plug all these holes, but he's taking his eye off of these other holes that are coming in from behind him. So when he does become Ramatut again, he's so focused on saving Ravana that he can't see the FF coming behind him, and
great point. Great point.
All of these things are folding in on it. I know that, referencing the distinguished competition might be sacrilegious in this context, but
hey, hold on. Hey, Chris, I don't even
it's
notice.
A great shirt. It's a great shirt.
I don't know if you noticed.
There was a really good issue of Jeff Johns and Jeff Katz's Booster Gold series that had Booster going into the Killing Joke, and he actually tries to prevent Barber from being shot by the Joker, and he tries over and over and over again, and he fails each and every time, because he comes to realize that the currents of time are pushing things to only really happen one way. So there might be some minor differences in the way that he actually does go about trying to change someone's fate, but at the end of the day, he has to resign himself to the idea that he cannot save her from being shot by the Joker. And I get kind of a similar vibe from this, in the sense that it's not happening quite the same way, but unwittingly he is facilitating the same destiny that he saw his older self fall into, and that he was determined to avoid, but he was completely unable to do it, because for whatever reason, he's not able to pull back and see the full picture enough to actually change the course of events, presuming he's even able to at all. And there's nothing really over the course of this series that convinces me that he is a master of time as much as just someone who can play outside of it.
That's a really good point. That it's almost like he's a pretend conqueror. Like he conquers, but he's not really conquering anything. He's destroying everything in his path, but it's not conquering. He's just destroying it. But he calls himself a conqueror to make himself feel better because he's in control of his destiny. But he's not, right? Like that's really interesting. That's a really cool concept. I didn't think about that. We're not quite ready to wrap up, but as we head towards that area, I I want to ask you all, some moments of this book that really kind of resonated with you, and I'll kind of start off with it. One of the things that this book hit me emotionally way more than I thought I was going to, because there's lots of really cool moments in the story where, and I'm going to bring up this one. This is the one, and for all of you guys, think about one in particular moment you really liked. Hopefully it's not too spoilerish, but you get what I'm saying. But one of the aspects I loved was in issue 1, and I talked about it on Twitter the other day. And when you have older Kang being kind of like, bitchy and moany to little Kang, like, oh, don't you dare! I'll show the panel. This isn't it, but I love this panel so much. It's kind of stupid, but not stupid, but it's just so silly. But I love it. It's just like, never love, you idiot! Come on, don't be so stupid! Oh my god, you dumb little kid! I'm gonna get drunk. And it's just, I think it's hilarious. It's just so funny, right? And to see young Nathaniel rebel against that. And seeing that ultimately this moment here, I don't know. In all seriousness, I say it to be funny, but I say it to be serious too. This part wrecked me, because there's a couple different things here. Why does Kang have the lines on his face? Not little Kang, but big Kang. Think about it. That's an homage to what he's got as a young child, right? Or a younger Kang, right? So that's where he gets it from. So you get that whole lead up of why Kang has these ridiculous lines on his face that was given to him for design purposes. Now we have an emotional purpose. And then you see the young Kang, telling him I'm going to be different. And he's like, and he just knows what's happening, right? What you see leading up to it, how he gets those 2 markings, and then how Kang follows up with what he knows was going to be said here. And he says, say it. And he says, love. And what happens afterwards, it's probably the most, it's a splash pages. It's followed up by a splash page. I'm not gonna say what it is, but it's the most non-big splash page from a physical standpoint. But I think one of the most impactful splash pages that I've had in a while, where it's just like, dang, I don't know if you guys get what I'm saying here, but it to me, it really showed the power of the medium. Because it's like we're getting these little bits and pieces, and all of a sudden what's usually used for a big splash page of a superhero beating the crap out of a villain, knocking him out, it's that, but a lot more emotional and darker and just it's a bummer, and it's just and I know you see it coming, but it still impacted me. I'm like, dang, just reading it the way that those 2 writers wrote it, I thought it was beautiful. I'm not sure if you guys like that part at all. I loved it. Anyone want to comment on that before I throw it out to everyone else's kind of more favorite parts of the book? Anybody? No?
You said it too well, man. Nothing.
All right.
I definitely connected to it, especially because it connects to what I was saying before. It's like, this is young Nathaniel. Look at the way he's saying. Love, right?
I know.
God, and he wants to hold it, and you want to just go to him and be like, "Don't listen to that old bastard. Hold on to that love." Yes.
Don't hold on. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't hold on. Yeah. Get away from that guy. Delman, what reading this comic? What was? I mean, again, I know maybe you don't remember the whole thing or whatever, but it was one moment that stood out to you. There could be a panel, a layout, or just dialogue. What in the story resonated with you as you thinking about one moment that you really liked from it?
Okay, so I have 2 one moments, and I'll explain it.
No, I read. Take your time, sir.
All right, so I read through it the first time and just really enjoyed the story, the character study, and at the end when that thing is happening. I'm trying to be really careful, but when the younger Kang leaves the time period and things I'll never see him again. When it loops back to that at the end of the series, and the older one is laying there going, "All right, see you later. Good luck with that." And I thought that was really clever. How he was never oblivious. It just the whole loop. I just really enjoyed the loop.
Right.
These things have to happen. And it just
exactly,
I mentioned John Connor's dad. There's no way to unravel it and understand it. This loop has to happen. So that was my
John Connor's
my first.
Yeah, that's perfect. Dude, that was you said it brilliantly. Bravo. That was awesome. All right.
seen too many of the Terminator movies too often. But
Hey, I don't blame
but in my enjoyment of this the story, going back, and I read through. I think we talked about this pre-show. I don't remember if it was on the show. I think it was pre-show. I went through and I read. I think it was your suggestion, Timeless, and then I read Fantastic Four number 19, and then the Young Avengers, and so then reading all of that history. Adam, that's funny. Reading all of that history, all of that new experiences I just had with Kang. Then when I reread Kang the Conqueror today, all the Easter eggs from all these different stories that it's been told really made me appreciate. So I don't have one moment, but all the Easter eggs. Maybe the one splash page where you see that Iron Man looking guy. I really had a good. That. There it is right there. That might have been probably my favorite after learning more about the character from other issues, other titles. Hopefully that makes sense, but yeah.
No, we'll get to that. I have two more things before we leave, after we get everyone's kind of favorite moments, but we'll get into that and a little bit, because I give you guys some extra credit, which some people decided to read that didn't. Adam, man, what I think you've already kind of maybe said it, but what's your kind of moment or two of the book that you really liked that you kind of resonated with you?
I will say I read the book. It's been maybe a month and a half ago now, at least a month ago. And so I have been meaning to reread it. I got about halfway through today. Okay. But I will say the loop to me on first read was more unsatisfying than satisfying, because as soon as they meet each other, old and young Kang, the moment that happens, I'm like, oh, I bet the end of this is going to be coming back to this point.
Well,
and
come on.
And so knowing that is the case, rather than just suspecting it, I'll probably be cooler with that the second time through and just be all right, let's just let this be what it is and see what, I can take from it. But I think I think I enjoyed the first issue the most, though I love that. The Egypt stuff was the second issue, right? That page we just looked at with Iron Lad. That picture was awesome. But I think the part that I enjoyed the most is 2 pages prior to the one, Paul, that you shared. When Nathaniel's talking to, I don't know if that's Ravonna or Addie, or if that's the same person. I think it's Ravonna. That's a Ravonna for sure. I think he is. He can't quite understand why her people, though they know the end is coming and it's coming imminently, why they're able to go on and how they're able to find meaning in their existence, because he can't find meaning in his, and he doesn't have that kind of imminent doom. So when she talks about the fact that this is, there's no other way. I mean, that is the beauty of living. And she talks about, says this is where we live, the place between the stars. I just thought that was beautiful. It evoked that conversation between Vision and Ultron. Ultron, where he's like, a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts, right? That idea that that she has, without any conquering, without any sort of thing to justify it, what he is desperate for, some kind of justification for his existence, which he thinks can only be had by conquering, by dominating. And he is touched by the fact that she has this, her whole people, they have this joy, they have this satisfaction in existence, though they know it won't last, though they know they have no power over their coming doom. I found that moment beautiful, and I was sad that insight was taken from him. That's a great point. The first issue I felt was the most, I think that's why I love the series so much, was that first issue. It does such a great job of setting you up, and I know you had some issues with this, we've all got into those, but the thing is about it that I think it makes me feel good about the future for you reading comics, Adam, because that to me is a better example of the medium of, because that's what I agree. That first issue is phenomenal. And I do think the other issues are good, but I definitely feel that does a great job narratively setting up the themes and the ideals of the story. And it does it, I think that's paced beautifully well, because they do a lot in one issue, but it's
beautifully paced. But because you get a lot of narration, and that narration's still there, but you get inside Nathaniel's head enough to where you know where it's going, and when it gets to that point, those points really hit and are impactful. So, well said, well said. Chris, favorite quickly, your favorite, one of your favorite parts of the book?
I think it
Or
was
series,
in issue number 3 when he realized that he was going to also become Ramatut. And things were going to play out in a similar way, because the thing that it made me think of was the concept that I think every child goes through, especially as they grow older, where you're a teenager and you see things a different way, and you might chafe at the idea that you have any similarity whatsoever to your parents, right?
I chafe all the time.
It,
oh, my bad.
yeah, right. Yeah,
Sorry.
got it.
Low humor, everybody. Sorry.
You do have to bow to the eventual realization, at least in most cases, that you do have in some cases, very, very close similarities with the people that brought you into the world.
Yeah.
And it's a far more literal element when it comes to Kang and Nathaniel, but I think that's what helps strengthen the overall theme, and it puts a finer point on, I think, a rite of passage that a lot of people go through. I would prefer to think that maybe I have a little bit more critical thinking ability than one of my parents, and maybe I would prefer to think I have a little more capacity for compassion than another one.
I love you, Chris. I love you, man.
But also too, I like, just today, I found myself going out to get food, and I was lollygagging because there was something else that I wanted to do, and I figured, well, I'm out, I might as well just do it. My dad did that shit all the time. Like, I am becoming a part of him that a teenage me would be mortified to learn. Obviously with Nathaniel, it's I'm not going to be the conqueror of time, and then of course he becomes another version of a pharaoh, and ends up being defeated by the Fantastic Four, as we all do, of course. But I just found that the thematic component of fighting so hard against your own lineage, only for it to naturally creep in around the edges until it starts to become a part of you naturally and organically. It's not always something to fight. In Kang's case, I wish he fought a little bit harder, but it's something that everybody goes through. And I just found that particularly resonant, on top of just the really solid Marvel storytelling that's at play here. And holy hell, this penciler, Carlos Magno,
word.
He's spectacular. So yeah, just another.
A couple things wrapping up before I one little bit here. I thought the art was impeccable, to be honest, and I thought he was very creative with his layouts. But I thought Adam brought up a good point, was that, and because Chris, I don't know if you knew this, Adam's more of a beginner with comic books, and he had trouble following some of some of those widespread pages that had like a little more, they weren't really defined. Weren't really as clearly defined with the where to go. It's a little, they weren't like a straight ahead, like left all the way. It's like left, down, right. It's, it's a little more creative, and
I sold comics. Don't worry, Adam. I sold comics to seasoned veterans who still lost some of the plot when it comes to the layouts. I think it's something that everybody goes through, depending on how experimental they can get. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And there are some experimental stuff in here, because I have already read it when he told me that. And I was like, well, I don't know. It's just, I just chalked it up to maybe just being not as a rookie of a comic reading. And I told him that I bought the graphic novel, I'm reading. I'm like, oh, I totally get what he's saying.
Yeah, totally.
Because I read it digitally, and I was like, oh, and I still read page to page. I don't read panel to panel usually, except for maybe those weird things that I totally just took for granted. And I was like, oh, I totally get what he's saying now. There are a couple, I think, chances that the artist does that doesn't. It's not the most clear thing in the world, but that being said, I do think his art layouts are, for the most part, pretty damn good, and his art, his overall art in general, is just really good.
The
Like
expressions are phenomenal.
Oh, that's a really well said.
The benefit to the lack of clarity is you end up looking at the page longer. Because you pick a direction, you go. If it doesn't work, you try it the other way, and then you're like, oh, okay, now this makes more sense, and you spend more time with it, and so it's all good.
The beauty of comics, you're getting it, man. You just need to read more now. We need to get you to read more.
The idea of reading comics is very much like a literal translation of Kang's own abilities, because we have Kang's abilities while we read the page, because we're able to take a snapshot of a moment in time and consume it differently depending on, our comprehension at any given moment. Like, it's one of the cool things about comics overall that very few other mediums can accomplish.
So, really quick before we wrap it up we'll talk about Young Avengers for a brief second. I want to dive into Dell's. He's got an awesome little thing here what we talked about before the show. But really quickly, for those who don't know, we say Nathaniel Richards. There's a really weird history with Kang and Reed Richards, and is he he's Nathaniel Richards, but Nathaniel Richards is also Reed Richards' dad. But they've kind of and John Byrne in the 80s went hard of saying that Kang and Kang and Nathaniel Richards are the same person, and because it's a whole long story. They've kind of deviated from that though, and they've pretty much said that he's a descendant of Reed Richards. He's not Nathaniel Richards' father, because that was getting bonkers. And they've hinted at this weird connection between Doom and Kang before. Even in Chris Cantwell's amazing Doom comic series, which, guys, I might have to get both you guys on for Doom, the Doom series, if you guys will come on again, because that's one of my favorite comic series in the last 10 years of Marvel. It's really good. It's Doom. It's a whole Doom book. And Kang has like a small, like a team up appearance, you could say. It's fantastic. Really great stuff. And Kang even says, I hear we're supposed to be related. Or no, Doom says to Kang, I hear we're related. And he's like, oh, that's the first I ever heard of it. Or something. It's something weird. Like, they kind of touch on it a little bit. Like, they both are kind of like, are we related? Like, it's weird. But they never go out and say it. But in the new Dan Slott run, they do confirm that Reed Richards is a descendant of Kang in some way. So here's my pitch, everyone. I think if I was a writer at Marvel, I would say this is what you do. At some point in the timeline after Doom and the generationals, whatever, a descendant of Doom and a descendant of Reed Richards, okay, or I don't know how you do it, at one point fall in love. And they have a child. And that descends into Kang, not Kang, but a descendant of Kang. And therefore is that kind of weird, like, but somehow gets like warped into away from knowing that that's who he is, but there is this weird connection of Doom because there's that weird mystical side of Doom, which you guys may not know of, that is there. That I think would tie both those things together, because he's a descendant of Reed Richards, and that would tie into that aspect, but then tie into the Doom aspect that you can kind of lose yourself into. That's what I would do, is have it be like you have like a Romeo and Juliet thing at some point. Not like, again, it had to be way down the line, but incorporate that into the Marvel universe at some point, and Kang's a descendant of that relationship at some point. Just my 2 cents, just my pitch to you guys. Merry Christmas, Marvel. You're welcome. Which I'm not sure. Obviously, everyone would probably say that's shit, but I don't care. I like it. Anyway,
so the Richards are the Skywalkers of Marvel, then, like everything just revolves around one family.
well, I think there's some truth to that in some ways. But I don't know. Fantastic Four is in a weird spot right now. I mean, I'll be honest, like, Dan Slott, I don't hate Dan Slott, but he kind of did some weird things with that team, and I don't like what he's done. He made Franklin not a mutant. I don't know. That's a whole long story. But yeah, there is a sense of that. The Fantastic Four are the first family. They're the first. Mm-hmm. They are the start of the 616 Marvel universe. That's it. All starts with them. So you could say that they are the Skywalkers. So that's where the Doom and the Reed Richards connection ties into. They could be related at some point. I do think it'd be cool if they meshed it eventually, and that's where Kang descends from. But that's just my own speculation wanting. So I had extra credit that Adam did not read because he didn't want to read comics because he hates comics.
Forgot. I totally would do it.
It's okay. We'll have you back on. We'll have you guys both back on. We'll talk about it. But I did give extra credit to Dell. Dell did do it, and Dell, talk about. I made you read Young Avengers, and you went even beyond that. I was like, oh, cool. So tell us about how you liked Young Avengers and everything.
Oh, I just thought it was terrific. It was a story that just pulled me right in because I had heard the term Young Avengers just referenced in different podcasts, and I had never really got into it. And just even where the genesis of the name came from was really like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It immediately gave it like credibility because it sounded kind of corny to me, to be honest with you, like Young Avengers. Okay,
I agree. I get it. Yeah.
And but then once they do a really good job of explaining that, like, okay, this is very much not corny. So I enjoyed the story, how Kang worked into the first 5 or 6 issues, and then I really just started to enjoy the team and I just kept reading. I'm on like probably the 3rd arc now that they're doing, and I really love how these characters are just tied into existing Marvel characters, but they're not. It's really it's enjoyable. It's a good read. I'm looking forward to like just tearing through it even more.
Yeah, I think you said it best that it sounds corny in theory, and me and Sean have talked about on the MCU fan show because he prefers the name Champions, which I freaking hate. I freaking hate that name. and I said this. I'm like, listen, you got to brand the Avengers. You got to stay on that brand, right? And he understands that aspect too. We've talked about it. You hear it on the MCU fan show all the time. We talk about it. I think Young Avengers, yes, it's a little cheesy, it's a little on the nose, but it really does work. And I think you brought up a great point. What the series does, it doesn't matter what they're called. It does a great job of incorporating these different characters of like they're tied with the Avengers, but they're not like, again, it's not too on the nose where it's like everyone's a descendant of the Avengers, like which I love. Avengers Next, that animated movie, which is an underrated movie, and they need to incorporate those characters in the 616. That's just my opinion. Maybe I can do that for you guys, Marvel, at one point. I'm never going to happen. But like there is something really cool about like they're tied, but they're not directly tied, and because of that, you're able to really tell a really interesting story and dynamic. And you're not tied to like having to tie everything into the original teams or whatever. They become their own characters, and that's what's so cool about it. And then Kang, to me, this was the first time ever, I think, besides the Roger Stern, John Buscema Avengers run, where Kang is maybe the best simple and easy to read Kang story that's really awesome. And there's a lot of surprises in that one, y'all. So go read it. Like maybe already kind of get into a little bit of what's to happen, but it's really good. It's really, really good. I love it. So like Dell said, like it's Young Avengers is what helped me get back into comic books. I think I was talking about that earlier, guys, and I totally got lost on a tangent. Classic. But when I got back into comics, it was Young Avengers that was the kind of the first thing that got me back into it. Like, oh man, this is really good. Like, this is good writing. This is really fun. And a name like Young Avengers, you think like that sounds stupid, but it's not. It's a really great story. All these comics are available on Marvel Unlimited. So I already posted a little bit about it. If you guys want to know, obviously you can go pick up the trade, but go on Marvel Unlimited. This is what they are. This is what they look like. Go find them. They're easy to find. I think Marvel Unlimited is an incredible service. You can get the stuff on the access on public library. I'm pretty sure that's called Hoopla. Go check out Hoopla, y'all. If you haven't checked that out, like if you don't want to pay for things, Hoopla app is incredible. And I'm going to talk more about that eventually on the binge, Chris. We got to talk about that because that is an underutilized service for so many different things, but comic books especially. If you don't want to spend money on this stuff, go to Hoopla. Download the Hoopla app, log into your library. You will not regret it. But yeah, go read Young Avengers. If you want to get prepared for Kang, Young Avengers first series, and this series called Kang, Only Myself to Conquer. I love this. I love this series. It's fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. For staying late. I know Dell, you're East Coast, so you're like, get the hell out of here, man. I gotta go to bed, So I appreciate coming on. You guys both run like different things going on. Dell, you have a lot of different things going on. I was researching you. I'm like, dang, dude, what do you not do? You run a freaking football things. You got a t-shirt business, I think you said. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this guy's incredible. Dell, tell me about where people can find you, follow you, and what where they can support your awesome content and what you're doing.
Oh, well, thanks so much, man. And thank you for the invite. This was a huge,
You're
not
coming back.
corny, but it was anytime, man. Anytime. It was a big honor. Thank you for having me on.
The honor meets you.
Yeah, so I'm just at Del Reed on Twitter. I've got just a lot of stuff going on. Like you mentioned, I got a t-shirt company where everything we sell gives back in some fashion to either local families here in Western New York or
That's awesome.
different charities and everything. We have a line called Fantastic, which is not Buffalo themed. It's more of it lets me scratch my itch for doing different comic stuff. Like this is one of the shirts we did. You can see it there. Just stuff like that. I really wish we didn't use a square. We should have used a hexagon. Whatever.
It looks good.
But thanks. But we do a lot of stuff with that. But Bill's Mafia, maybe you've heard of that term. Like I'm the one that coined that term.
I've heard of Bill's Mafia.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got my start on social media in terms of people paying attention to what I was saying to their own detriment, probably. But so
Good stuff, man.
that's kind of what I got going on. But yeah, at Del Reed on Twitter, all over the place. But it's great. And I just really appreciate you coming on. Everybody knows me on social media. It's a big Bills fan, but what they don't know is I love superhero movies and comics and everything just as much. The Bill stuff hit first, so that's what I'm known for. But so this is a great opportunity for me to express that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. And like I said, we'll get you on. If you're a Booster fan, we'll be covering some Booster stuff. So we'll get you on. You'll be hearing from me. Trust me, you'll be hearing from me. I love having you on. Thank you so much for coming on. Adam Nye, sir, it is so crazy that I'm talking to you. That I used to listen to your music, and we you run in circles of music that I loved, and to get you on a show talking about comics is pretty awesome. So I'm hoping I can get you back on again and read more comic books. I hope I can inspire you to read more comics in general, but get you to read more comics too for the show. I hope I can get you back on in the near future. Oh,
are you talking to me? Because it glitched a minute. But
I gave you a whole thing and you ruined it.
If you're talking to me, then yes, I want to read more comics. I want to come back on the show. Man, sorry, it keeps glitching.
It's all good.
But,
it's all good.
Yeah, if people want to find me, I'm on Twitter at Adam Nye. I don't do a ton on Twitter. I'm on Facebook more because I'm old. That's where I do my MCU rankings and stuff. But you can also I have a band, Too Bad Eugene. We just put out a new record last year. Awesome. We're on all the streamers and we're on the socials, and you can check us out there.
Right on, man. Well, if you can hear me, you're coming back. I'm going to make you read more comic books, okay?
I hear you. Thank you. Yes. Thanks for having me on this time.
No, for sure. We'll get you on. Both of you guys are coming on soon.
And I appreciate your guidance. It's helpful to have a coach going into this.
That's what the binge exists for. Go back, and I know I took my own horn here, but this is the whole binge is designed for. At least I try to have it designed for people like yourself who are looking to get into more comics. We don't spoil things, but we try to kind of get you into where to read. So if you want to read more comics, I have a whole playlist called MCU Required Reading that you're a part of right now. Go on there. I got tons of comics for you to all read. You may not love all of them, but I think you'll get into more of just the feel of everything of what these I like and think is good. So cool. Go check it out there. Chris,
if I can just pump your tires real quick.
Please.
I want to say real quick. I'm sorry. There's so much gatekeeping on social media and just fandom in general. And what you guys are doing is so the opposite. I really give you a lot of credit, and it can be intimidating, just opening up the Marvel Unlimited app. I don't even know where to start. So you guys have done an excellent job in terms of the breadcrumbs, in terms of leading us to where some of the great content is. So I just want to take a moment and just say thank you for that.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. That's exactly
very kind words. Thanks.
Yes. Agreed. No, thank you. No, and that's we want to promote the medium, not just of Marvel, of DC, but because the comic medium is obviously Garfield, Peanuts. I mean, there's artsy stuff. I live down the street from Fantagraphics, which is the artsiest stuff you're going to find probably out there. And the medium of comics is more than just superheroes. I love superheroes. I'm never gonna love superheroes. I'm not gonna be one of those people who's I cannot love superheroes. It's just not my thing anymore. I grew up F that. That's not my bag. But there are so many great comics that we got. There's a comic we'll eventually do called Pulp. That's by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, which is not a superhero story. It's just a drama, and I'm really excited about reading it. And it's a comic book, and there's great drama in comics that people don't know. And I just want people to discover the medium because it's a beautiful medium that I think is just people just don't know because of a long story. But Chris and I talk about this all the time. That just for over the years have been told that it's a nasty medium. It's a stupid medium. It's only weird people like comics medium. Like, but it's not that. It's a medium. It's a whole art form. And people, when they discover it, when people really actually take time to read the comics and learn and grow, and they can grow from them, they go, man, comics are fucking rad. It's like, yeah, you just gotta take away the other stuff and get away from it. And that's what the binge exists. One of the reasons, there's another big reason, but that's a whole different long story. But it's there to promote the medium and get people reading more comics so they can discover beautiful art form that it is. So thank you, Dale. It means a lot to me. Honestly, you said that. So that's awesome. Thank you, sir. Chris.
Meant it. You're welcome.
Awesome, man. Chris.
Do you know where to find me? I'm here.
The Reverend. Reverend himself.
No,
All right, y'all.
We got more debriefs coming. Star Trek Picard season 3 starts next week.
Can't wait.
We're gonna get the band back together.
Love Star Trek. So good.
It's so good. It is so good. That's the first right thing you've said about Star Trek maybe in your life.
So good. I love Star Trek. I can't wait. Can't wait for Star Trek. Anyway, everyone, thanks for joining us. We've got next week. What's next week? I forgot. Oh, next week's this is a big deal. Only like one person's going to watch all the way to the end anyway. But next week is going to be, I think, if all things go well, me interviewing my wife for Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And if you want to know how that deals with comic books, my wife is the artsy side of comic book side that is not what I prescribe to. So we're going to talk about how comic books have influenced our life together as a relationship, but also her as an individual and what they do mean for our daughter, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a fun little interview next week as we celebrate, because we can't go anywhere. It's Tuesday. What the hell are we going to do? And
who scheduled it on a Tuesday? What the hell?
Yeah, seriously, stupid Valentine's Day. So anyway, I'll be next week's episode. Then we got lots of other great content coming this month. But Chris, why don't you take us away, sir?
Read more comics.
Sounds good. Bye.